Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next Wasteless World Talks are here, and today not only with Bill and Kevin, but we have a special guest, Noah. And I'm really looking forward to discuss today's topic. And because I have Bill on the top of the screen, I have to say the topic today is the word human. And Bill, if you close your eyes and you hear the term human, what came first to your mind?
So sometimes people say, um, "Can you act more human?" Or they'll use the word as if it's um, a compliment that humans being human is to be good, and yet human humans created war. Humans are uh, awful to each other. So I am mixed about that word. It's both positive and negative. But I will admit that for the pronoun, people say their name and then they say he, she, it, whatever they say. I have my name and I have human because I don't like the distinctions. I don't like putting people into separate camps and making them different. So I do say human. Those are the first two things that came to my mind.
Okay, Kevin, you second. So what do you see?
I'm with Bill on this. We're just a bunch of contradictions. When you think of humans, you think of the best and the worst of a species. It's all inside us. So we're very, you think of the humans of humanity, and then you think of how inhumane we can be at the same time. And it's all the bits in the middle which make us so interesting, I think. I love the fact that being human is being jealous. It's being envious. It's being greedy. We're a wonderful group of perhaps not nature's finest attributes, but there we are.
So you have seen how it works. So Noah, if you close your eyes and you hear the term human, what came first to your mind?
I think that term human, I appreciate the balance that Bill and Kevin are talking about, and I agree that humans can be wonderful and terrible at the same time. But I think that the word human has, for me at least, a much more positive connotation. I thought of the Yiddish word mensch, which has a German root, which is a rough translation of human, and it actually means like a good person, a little bit soft, but a good person. So maybe I have a slight bias there, but it feels warm to me, that word. It feels connected. It feels positive. But I recognize that, as a species, we are everything good and everything terrible at the same time.
Thank you for that. Bill, I have a question. Generally, I have seen all around me, and you express it quite well. The term is used frequently, but at the same time, you cannot see it on anyone's business card, almost anyone. You cannot see, we do not introduce ourselves as humans. We all the time use different titles, which we get through education, through role playing, or whatever. Why do you think it was so? Why it is put on site? Why don't we teach the children in a school that it is the highest title which we can reach?
Great, all great questions. All great questions. How we define ourselves. How we define ourselves. We define ourselves by work. I'm thinking of cocktail parties when you meet someone new and you say, "So what do you do?" As if what we do to make money to feed the kids defines us. But to a great degree, that's true. We're looking for a definition for ourselves. So I change it a little bit when I go to a cocktail party now, and and I meet somebody new. I say, "What do you do for fun?" And I get a very, very different answer, right? They talk about skiing or traveling, but they don't talk about going to the office and building widgets or something.
Noah, do you think that the meaningfulness in meaning of we live meaningful life is connected to the term human?
I think that I think this is a very interesting moment in time to be having this conversation, because the announcement the release last week of ChatGPT 4.0 that has human can replicate human inclination and emotion, may require us to use that word human to define ourselves more than we have had in the past, because it was just obvious, right? You're talking to another, intelligent life form. Up until very recently, it was easy to assume that life form is human. But that is actually not the case as of today, which is a little bit mind-boggling and makes this conversation very, very important. Bill, I want to actually go back to your comment about the introductions at the cocktail parties, and I'm interested in Michael and Kevin's perspective, having being not being American. I think that's a very American thing, actually. I've spent some time in Europe. I lived in other places around the world. And in some cultures, it's really gauche to ask somebody what they do at a cocktail party, when in America, it's the first thing we say out of our mouths. So Michael, sorry to kind of pivot a little bit, but I'd be really interested in your opinion and Kevin's opinion of that. And is that a very American perspective and context to define yourself by your vocation and your work? Or do you think that's universal to all humans?
Kevin, if you can take it.
Well, I was thinking, if you want to torture a German, ask them how much money they earn.
Really?
That's
the last thing you're allowed to ask.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think what you do for a living is next on the list. So, small talk in Germany is extremely small. And you don't mention money, and you don't mention what you do, because if you're a doctor, the next one will be, oh, really? Do you have 3 houses? How much, what car do you drive? Blah, 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 and all that stuff, which Germans hate. The Danes, they're a little bit more, their life is focused around their job. It's part of their identity. So they're much more like Americans in that respect.
In Czech, generally, you ask, how are you? That's the basic. The answer is all the time fine. So you do not have to ask, because you get all the time the same answer. But it depends. So I'm not so frequent guest on cocktail parties, but on a standard meetings, business meetings, you speak about work. I can share quite interesting experience with my business card. Generally, there is really the title human on it. And there was even the title president before, because I was a president of a company. And it's quite interesting. I hand it over all the time the Japanese way. So 2 hands, so you can read it. And having there the human, it's all the time the same response. The people look at the business card, then look in my eyes, look at the business card again, and start speaking. Start talking, not about the title, not about me, not about work, just start to speak. And that's a very, very interesting way how to start conversation. So, but I don't think we have it like Bill, but I like the way how Bill changed the question generally. It was quite interesting.
Michael, can I say something about the way we see ourselves right now as humans would change dramatically if we were to find out that we're not the only civilization in the universe or in the galaxy or whatever we are. And I think that discovery would help us really a lot to become better humans. Because then we would somehow or other all be on the same team, if we like it or not.
Kevin, is that because you think that identification of extraterrestrial life as intelligence, or either equal to or superior to ours, clearly superior if they are able to travel here? Is it superior intelligence, so we're not the smartest things in the universe, or is it the threat of extraterrestrial life?
I would like to think that it's the fact that we have total dominance over this planet. We mistreat it, we mistreat everything on it, we lord over everything. And it would put us in our place if we were to suddenly bump into something superior to us. And then I think that would force us not only to rethink what we're doing, but to use our gifts in a much more positive way. I mean, because we're going to need whatever it is which makes us the best, much more than the desire to blow things up and kill things.
So both of you have used the word superior, and Kevin, you just said the best. How do we judge that? Are we able to calculate faster, quantum brains or something? Or do we treat each other? What does superior mean?
Yeah, Bill, I think that's a really good question. I again, going back to the emergence of AI, clearly there is, in certain aspects, superior intelligence created now. There's the ability to consume more information more quickly and parse it out. There's the ability to process more quickly. So there's speed and scope of intelligence that surpasses humanity right now. On the other side, there's a very interesting conversation happening right now about granting whales personhood. The Maori tribes have done this, and it changes their legal status, and it gives them rights that people would have. And there are arguments that society is superior to ours. They're peaceful. They live long, connected lives with deep family connections and travel all the time, and live in a more harmonious way with nature. So the superior is, clearly in the eye of the beholder. It's a loaded word for sure.
Generally, what I see as humans, I follow the development of the robots, especially the humanoid robot. Not because I like it, but maybe because the term robot originated here in Czech in 1921. But I am asking all the time why they do develop humanoid form robots. Human, in comparing to other creatures of nature, is one of the worst. Only two hands, not so good eyes, not so good ears, not so good nose. So we are really one of the, if we do not have the technology which we developed and invest in, we are far behind almost every creature on the planet. And so I never use the term superiority in connection to humans and in comparing to nature, because what I see in the development, it's the development in a wrong direction. If you have 2 years ago, there was introduced the robot dog by Boston Dynamics generally. And the first question I have, why don't he has wheels on the paws, on the legs? Because it will help him to be faster and at the same time to do the same. 1 week ago, they introduced wheels finally on his legs. And he does exactly what I said because it's so obvious. So it can be combination. But so that's a question. What was interesting in the noon discussion was that partly when I asked the question, what do people see? They say me. When I ask them what they see if I say human. And the others say, I see God. That was the second response. The next one, I see others. And then there was the feelings and similar to what we describe in here. But it was quite interesting. It was quite interesting. And we go really deep. And we find out that we are, even thanks to AI, which you mentioned, Noah, we are close on the edge generally to wake up. And I don't think, Kevin, that we need aliens to come here. We just need to wake up.
I have an interesting story I found today about humans, and just by coincidence.
Coincidence does not exist, you know it, so.
Denmark is the most trusting society on earth. 74% of people trust each other, which means that 25% of the Danish economy comes from trust in the fact that we don't have to use lawyers, we don't have burglar alarms, we don't have security systems. That actually accounts for 25% of our economy. Isn't that remarkable?
You know, when you said that, wasn't Denmark the country that where the children can recognize propaganda and deep fakes? They recognize it better than any other country. They did a study a year ago or 2 years ago, and one of the countries, Norway, Denmark, was at the top of the list because of how they teach their children. So now you say the same thing about trust. So is trust and the ability to recognize propaganda related? It feels like they should be diametrically opposed, right? I trust you, but I don't believe you, or something like that. I don't know. That's crazy.
I do remember in one of the talks about nothing, which I have in Czech, there was a CEO of the Volvo company in Denmark. The CEO was a Czech lady, and she's right now moving back after 10 or 15 years in Denmark. And she said exactly what you described. She does not lock the door. And when there has been the visitors from Czech, they didn't believe it. Because we even lock our own office when we go to toilet. So, yeah, time to time, you have to. And I was there, not a victim, but I was there in 90s, where a man in a boiler suit came to an office, took 5 notebooks, nobody noticed him, and he left. And
so that's really interesting because what I want to say earlier is that the one thing there are many people smarter than me that say that the one real advantage, the one thing that has allowed humans to be as successful as we are on this planet is that we're the most adaptable species. And even at this level, we're talking about minor adaptations of trust. Cultures that are not physically, geographically that far from each other, right, have adapted to a society based in trust. And for various reasons in other cultures, there's distrust and protectionism. So that adaptability of human nature, not just the physical adaptability where we can live in the tropics or in the Arctic, but that social adaptability of humans is a very interesting and perhaps unique trait to this species.
I will say that especially the social one or the virtual one, because all the other creatures live only the physical life. Only we are living 2 lives. One is the virtual one or the social economical one. and the second is the physical one. So where we adapt to the sun, cold, or whatever region. But the animals can do that as well. So I just read a few years ago, I have a special material which I get from India, and one of the advantage was it was a construction material that the bugs do not eat it. And when I show it in UK and in Czech and Germany, they said we will never have termites here. Last year or 2 years ago, on the north of UK was found the most aggressive termite type which live on the earth. So I think that the nature maybe needs a little longer. On the other hand, comparing the life cycle of a termite with the life cycle of a man, probably there is a big difference. So they have several generations. But I think that the adaptability for us, especially with this socio-economical, but is the same like with the time. The time is constructed by man, and the socio-economical system again it's a construct which we created. From the very beginning I say it's a wrong one, but this is not what I can change, but I can teach people not to waste. So that's the difference.
And Michael, just to check, that termite in northern UK, is it the same species of termite, or is it a different species of termite?
They say it's the same. It's the aggressive. They did not have so much. Probably they haven't seen so many, but they said it's the same. So, and this is a special species, which is, I think, North American, North African. I don't know exactly. It's quite a long time when I read the story, but it was quite interesting because it led me to the fact that even we will need this material, and we can see it around. So the temperatures play crazy during the year, and it will not come back. So to the old days. We have still time, Bill. If you look at the time, we still have a lot of time.
I'm not looking at the time. I'm wondering what's going on in four brains on my TV screen.
I've been sitting on a quote I read recently, which I'll share with you now. It was by I just picked up a book by Jan Ride. He's the CEO of Hastings, which I did not know, but it's the world's most luxurious mattress company. They make incredibly expensive beds. And he wrote a book called When Businesses Love, and it's a topic I'm very interested in at the moment. But he refers to the fact that we are human beings, not human doings, a number of times. And I think that one of the things that we've done in recent culture is prioritized activity over presence and attention. It's more important that we're doing something rather than we're really savoring an experience and taking the time and the focus and the attention and the commitment to be fully present in that moment and that experience. And I liked the play on human doing versus human being, and I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
That's very interesting. I think I've heard that one before, but it goes not but and it goes to how we value other people, ourselves, and in fact, countries. And I think we've had this discussion about gross domestic product (GDP) defined in 1937, but it has everything to do with money. It doesn't have anything to do with lifespan, happiness, or anything else. And so human beings or human doings says how we value each other. How much money do you have? How big a car do you have? And things like that, because you are valued for what you do, not valued for the fact that you are being. I love that.
there was one moment when in the noon discussion when we came to the topic of perfection and imperfection. And we find out that one of the great advantage or one of the signs of human inside is the imperfection. But the society pushes us for perfection. So in the very opposite direction. But nature doesn't need to be perfect. If it will be perfect, it will not exist. If it will be IKEA outside, it will not exist. We will not sit here. It will simply does not be here. So I think the imperfection is one of the topics. And the question is why we generally lost this ability, for example, the ability to ask questions. In the school, we do not learn that. We learn how to answer questions, but we do not ask questions. And especially in my country, it's a very common. And it's quite interesting that I don't know any school which really teach the children to ask questions. Do you know any?
No, I mean, this is a different topic, I think, but the education system, the Western education system, works towards homogenization. It works towards creating order. It works towards creating generations of people that will follow direction and obey and serve a role in society that currently exists, rather than creating a society for the future. There's a lot wrong with education, and the things that we squelch in children: creativity, love, adventure, the willingness to take risks, compassion. These are things that we literally in some cases beat out of children, which does not bode well for the future.
But what you just described, it's exactly about humanity and human. This is why these discussions are so great. It looks like we go in a different direction. At the end, we find out, no, we are on the same boat. We still are at the beginning of this discussion. So you are right. Kevin, you have something to say.
Yeah, I was going to say that you can find out a lot about the species by the name it gives itself. And so from a scientific point of view, we're Homo sapien, but we call ourselves human. And thinking about education, our finest, or used to be our finest education, was the humanities. It was art, literature, poetry, history, all of those things, which are, I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK university system, those things have been put onto the back burner, that humanities are no longer important. These days, it's science, or it's this, or it's that, or it's just turning out people to fit into business. And the danger we have is that we're losing our humanity because we don't concentrate on our humanities. And I think the other interesting thing is that the opposite, as we've named ourselves humans, we've also named our opposite as inhuman. And so we haven't made ourselves opposite to the other species on the planet, but we've made ourselves opposite to people who don't behave in the way that decent human beings should.
That's an interesting exploration, Kevin. Like if we, Michael asked earlier what it means to be human and how we define that, but it'd be also really interesting to explore how we define inhuman, what those qualities are.
Yeah, that's interesting, Noah. Inhuman, a dog is inhuman, right? I mean, it's certainly not human. And yet, the dogs can be the most friendly, lovable, loyal, and so on, all the good human qualities.
Yeah, I wonder, they sound alike, and I'm going to presume they have the same roots. But when you mentioned dogs, Bill, I thought of inhuman and inhumane, inhumane treatment. I have to imagine they're super closely related terms, but that inhumane is embodied in evil qualities, doing cruel things to other living things. So maybe by that definition, Kevin, if you can flip it like that, humanity could be positioned as what's good, right? If inhuman is what's bad, then human would logically be what's good. But I think we've lost that thread somewhere along the line.
I think so, but the thought is right. There are almost every person is a decent person. Most people are lovely. There's very few people who are not nice. And so to be a human is to be a nice person in general terms.
What drives you in a war to fight in a war as a soldier? Humanity or inhumanity?
Well, if it's defensive in nature, so if I were in Ukraine right now, what would drive me to pick up a gun and go shoot some Russians would be defense of my family, defense of myself, my neighbors.
You know, I do remember when there was the war in Iraq. I was at the years when I should go to the army. And I do remember I worked at a steel factory at the time. I wake up somewhere around 4 o'clock, and there was the first news about the war in the radio. And they said there has been killed 20 humans and 20 soldiers. And at that moment, I realized not everyone is a human. It's a soldier, and I should go to switch my humanity to be a soldier. You know, it was not a pleasant feeling. Even now, thinking back many years, I have a very negative goosebumps on my skin, to be honest. So because it was a very unpleasant feeling, and I think that it is really important to divide, to set up the human part, because every one of us have it inside. I call it to wake up human in human. And I think it should be possible. And coming back to what Kevin says before about the extraterrestrial and so on, I don't think we need them, but we need something. You know, COVID brings us closer to the unity, but not close enough.
This is a very interesting conversation. I like the play on words a lot around these topics. So, Michael, I think I've never heard in English casualties described as human and non-human. The way that they're typically described in English is civilian, right? Which then leads to civil society, right? And civil society actually has a lot to do with humanity and human social structure. And it's interesting that the warriors are outside of that civil definition, yet they're essential, presumably, to maintain civil society. That's a really interesting exploration of like different facets of humanity. Like, do we require inhumane behavior to maintain at its essence what it is to be human?
You know, there is a lot of, and Abel says many times that the future is riding on the back of language. And we have found that Czech language is very rich language, you know, really, really rich. It's very hard to translate. Even AI has quite a big difficulties. And we spoke at the beginning about AI, and we have in Czech very interesting saying, which I find out that almost none of the nations has something similar. We say that fire, it's a great servant, but very bad master. And if you take it to AI, we are on the stage where it's becoming a master. It already, in somebody's life, it is the master already. We are the tools which are used by AI. And you mentioned Noah, that it is important, and it is the stage where we can recognize the human being, even having GPT-4o and so on with all these aspects. I think it is important. It is important to really wake up the human, and right now is the right time, because then it can be late. And it was described really in 1921 by Karel Čapek, RUR. What will happen if the machines will recognize that they don't need humans? They will simply not support them. So simple it is.
To what you're saying, Michael, there was a cartoon that I saw recently, and it was a man standing beside a table, and on the table was his cell phone. And the cell phone is saying to the man, I am not your device. You are my device.
Unfortunately, that's right. I was addicted to my smartphone. So, and only, Noah, you haven't seen it. This is a wise phone, because it teach me in 1 month how not to be addicted to my smartphone. 15 years in a box, I switch it on 80% battery. That was the right mobile phone with a long-term battery.
Yep, I appreciate that. I'm not quite there yet. I'm addicted to my phone, and I justify all of its functionality.
You know what makes you addicted? I find out when I was 48. Notifications. Switch the notifications off, and you will realize it will start to serve you again, not the opposite way. It's quite time consuming because you have to switch one by one, but it works. But I'm sorry, so we are 2 minutes to the end, and once again, we started a discussion, and we are just at the beginning, but I hope that we will continue. I like the group. I like 4 of us to discuss. And every single week, we have the opportunity to change the future. So let's do it by changing today's opinion of people and businesses and everyone who can listen. So any final words? 1 minute 30.
I just want to thank you for the conversation, the opportunity to join you. This is a really great way to start my Wednesday midweek with my brain engaged and thinking about some bigger picture issues. So thank you for including me. I appreciate it.
Well, no, we joke amongst ourselves that there's so much we could talk about humans now for hours or days, right? But we've done 81 words now in the last couple of years. But how many words are there in the English language? 5,000, 10,000, 100,000? We have so much work to do. We have
I think there are 500,000 English words. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's meet again. Let me wish you have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, be free, and please be human. That's the most important part. And see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.